Hello, my name is Alan Wiley. I am the assistant pastor at Sharer Memorial Presbyterian Church in Lake Wiley, South Carolina, and I'm also the pastor of youth and children here. So I am delighted. I have the honor of sitting here with Ed Freeman, who's written this wonderful little book, and I'd like to give him the opportunity just to tell you a little bit more about it. So, Ed, why don't you start by telling us how you came up with the idea of Grandpa's story of little Teddy Freeman?
Thank you. There's a couple of things behind this. It just didn't happen all at one time. I had retired, and I thought that I would write a book. And I thought it would be on the career that I had as a manufacturing consultant. So I started to write this book, and I really couldn't get anything to come out. In fact, there was a time when I nodded off while I was typing. And then I went to a salt and pepper dinner with 3 other couples. The salt and pepper dinner is a way for our church for people to get to know one another that might not usually be in the circle of friends that we have. And at that dinner, a question was asked: tell us one of your fondest memories as a child. And that fondest memory was my relationship with my grandfather. And that's going to be the book, Grandpa's Story of Little Teddy Freeman. And I was the little Teddy Freeman. So then there was a thought that crossed my mind. That's the book I should be writing, that fondest memory. It should be a child's book, not a book that's written for people in the manufacturing community. And I began to write that book, and it all came out. It was the fact that I'd failed at what I thought I was going to do, and I was successful when that thought crossed my mind. And maybe a little later I'll tell you about what that means.
Now that's interesting because most children's books these days are fiction. So why did you write this particular book, a factual book, a true story?
Well, I have trouble thinking of fiction. It's not part of who I am. Fiction doesn't come out. I think I'll sit down and write a cowboy story. I can't come up with that. I have to write about something that I know about, and this is something that I knew about. So that's how we came up with it. It's all I could do.
Well, it's good. Now, was the raking of leaves difficult? I have to ask that. I mean, pulling the wagon through the neighborhood, were you a little kid? Was this a heavy load? Was that hard?
Well, it got a lot harder than I thought. I was responsible for raking the leaves in my yard, but I knew it was going to take a couple of hours, and it did end. But when I spoke to my grandfather, when I saw him one day, he said that he was creating a compost pile. I didn't even know what compost meant, but he explained it to me. It was just kitchen scraps and leaves and everything. He was from England, and they created a garden, and he needed this stuff for his garden to be really good. And as I was walking home, as you'll see in the book, kicking a rock along the sidewalk, I was trying to think of what can I do to help my grandpa, because I knew that if I could do that, it would please him. The first thing on my mind is, what can I do to make my grandpa happy, because he always made me happy. And that's when this thought crossed my mind that said, I know I can rake leaves. So you'll see in the book how that thought unfolded and how it created the work for me. But to answer your question, it became a lot harder than I thought, because I was doing it a lot more often than I'd ever done before. At 7, the rake was taller than me when I stood it up on end. So, yeah, you'll see in the book how difficult it was, but I kept at it.
Yeah, so what motivated you to keep at it like that? You could have just said you couldn't do it anymore.
Well, that was a shared thought. I didn't know how to find out if other people needed their leaves raked. I thought everybody did them themselves. But as I got to thinking about it, I said, well, maybe they don't like raking their leaves. And it started out with Mr. Alley, and you'll see in the book how that story unfolded. But I found out that because I did a good job, everybody was asking for me to come rake their leaves. So my thought was, I found something nobody liked to do. And so I did it for them. And of course, as a small child, I thought that was a lot of money. When you read the book, you'll see just how little that was.
Yeah. So doing a good job in word of mouth still, to this day, seem to be the best advertising. You learned that at a young age. That's beautiful. Now, I of course, have read the book. It seems to me there's a bit of an entrepreneurial spirit you're going for that you had that you would like for children today to have. What I mean by that is the goal is not for parents to read this book and to see, oh, well, I need to come up with a list of detailed chores that I can enforce upon my child to get them doing things. Instead, it seems like your desire is that children would think, well, hey, I have a goal. It's something that is actually attainable that I can go out and accomplish. Or maybe like you, they see a loved one that they want to please. And they take this motivation and they say, so where can I find some work to do? What can I do with this to attain that goal or to please that person? So I say all that to ask this hopefully simple question. How do the parents help their children respond to this book without becoming taskmasters of the children? Again, not creating a list of to-dos. Instead, coming alongside the child and saying, well, you've got a willingness to work and a goal. Let's help you get there.
Well, in today's world, it's just as when I was doing this 66 years ago. You do want to find out how you can make a little bit of money. Parents give allowances. And when they give allowances, it could be just because they completed the work. I'll give you a quarter for doing the dishes every night. Yeah. Well, that's one way to do it. But the only thing that happened is that they accomplished the task. When the parent becomes involved with the child and goes and sees how much they've done when they not only did the dishes, but they cleaned the countertop. Yeah. Now you're rewarding them for doing something good, as far as doing something that was just accomplished. It was a chore. So you do find a way that will benefit the child with doing something better with just a simple task as washing the dishes. So the reward is attached with a benefit that neither of you talked about. The child wanted to please you. You gave them the money that you agreed upon.
Yeah. That gets to my next question, because it seems like the goal of good parenting is not just to corral and control kids' external behavior, but to really shape and to mold their hearts so that they would actually desire and even delight to be obedient and to do good. So how do you hope this book does that? How do you hope this book gets past teaching little 7-year-olds good business planning? And how do you hope it gets down into their hearts?
That's the real question. How do you get it to their heart? And the answer is a simple task is, what creates a goal? Well, the business world says it has to be reasonable, achievable, have a time frame, and agreed upon. Well, spitting it out like that sounds like it's a business world. But that's what you're doing with your child. You want to let them know that what you've expected of them is reasonable. They can actually do it. It's achievable. You expect them to do it before they go to bed at night. That has a time frame. And then when you have the child agree that they will do those things, all the 4 things that are meant to be looked at as a child at 7 years old, they all happened. It just wasn't introduced like that. But in order for it to work, then the smiles, the fact that the parent knows the child achieved that goal. It just wasn't expected. The child didn't moan about it or groan, oh yeah, I got to do dishes every night. It's her turn, or whatever it might have been. They are expected to do it. They've agreed upon it. Those are the 2 tenets that will get you the results of what you had hoped for before you even started. Now the big one is they did a good job. That's the one that's more difficult to reach. In fact, get up from the chair and go in and inspect their work. If they had to clean their room, go check it out. That's your job as a parent. And what have you done when you've done that? You've given them a heart for doing a good job and pleasing you. And wasn't that your goal when you started?
Yeah. Very well said. So, I'll ask you one simple question here to give you an opportunity to really tell us what's the most important reason for you to have written this particular book.
This book is a little bit different. A lot of children's books today have really good illustrations that are fun. The things that they're doing are fun, and they might not ever even touch upon reality. This book is reality. It was a true thing that happened between my grandfather and me. I recall that I was driving my granddaughters. They were in the back seat. They were very quiet, and I looked through the mirror, and their thumbs were going wildly across this iPhone or something. And I said, "What are you doing?" And they said, "We're talking." And I said, "To whom?" And they said, "Each other." I pulled the car over. I told them to turn it off. You can talk to each other eyeball to eyeball. You can see what's going on. That iPhone doesn't tell your sister anything about how you feel, how you look at your sister. These are things that you want to have done. Things are different today. They don't have to be all technology. They can be real things. And I'm trying to introduce something back that's a real thing. Something that showed where no one wanted to rake leaves. And I did it for them. That was a good thing. The other way is to do something that makes me happy. Well, it makes me happy to know that I've chosen to teach my children how to do their chores. My daughters cut grass because I taught them to, and I inspected the work when it was done, and they knew exactly how it was to be done, and they smiled and they were pleased because they were paid for a good job. That's my hope. Turn it from a chore to and using technology to a relationship that would make both parties happy, mom and dad and the children.
Wow. Well, I've got just one more question, and you actually led me to it because you said earlier, I believe you said a thought crossed your mind, and you said you might tell me what that meant. Would you care to?
Yeah, I do, because it's what drives my whole life. It's what gives me purpose in my life. And that thought that crosses my mind always happens when I least expect it. I didn't have anything on my mind. I was thinking of something else. And all of a sudden, this thought crosses my mind that says, the manufacturing book, that's not going well. And I knew that. But this thought said, write a children's book. And it came upon me. In fact, I got chills, even as I do now when I'm talking to you, that it came upon me, write a children's book. I believe thoughts like that come from God Almighty. The Holy Spirit was in the room. I was asking, what am I doing? And the thought crossed my mind. My part of it is to take that thought, massage it, plan it, create it, and here's the book. Just because that simple thought crossed my mind. 9 months later, the book's ready to be published. Yeah. So I want people to know that in my world, I have the last word in this book that I think is important. It's train up a child in the way he should go. And when he gets old, he will not depart from it. So at 72 years old, that thought crossed my mind. And my part was to do something that would be pleasing to the Lord. It's Proverbs 22:6. You can look it up. Read what's above it and below it if you do. But know that this came from the Lord.
Well, and I want to thank you for this time. I am blessed and humbled to hear of your love for the Lord and your faithfulness to Him, and I'm encouraged by this little book, and I pray the Lord's blessing upon it and upon you.
Thank you very much.